seconds to go.
So yeah, thank you all for coming to our TED Talk on boundaries. You probably maybe know myself, Michaela, coach here at Pet Vet 365, and I'm also here today with two of our other wonderful coaches, Dr. Julie and Coach Heather, and we're just going to kind of tag team this today. Dr. Julie has had her own practice for over 20 years, I believe it was, led teams, saw pets, all of your problems she's tackled as well. So Coach Julie here, and then Coach Heather as well. Years of HR experience, years of organizational development, just as well. Also, her wife is a vet, so she gets it too. So you'll be hearing from all of us. So we're just gonna dive right in to all things boundaries. So want you to think about, you're probably here maybe thinking, well, you're maybe thinking I have a boundaries problem, or I don't, or maybe fall somewhere in the middle. I remember when I first heard about boundaries, I didn't think that was my problem. I just thought I was tired, exhausted, doing too many things, and didn't realize at the core of it was boundaries. And so I'm going to go through a couple slides of signs and symptoms. If you kind of think, this is you, be so bold to share it in the chat. If it's like, oh yeah, that's definitely me, or other boundaries that we don't share, please go ahead and list it in the chat. So the first one, maybe obvious one, you have a hard time saying no, hard time saying no to your team, your clients. And then with that, the next one, even if you do say no, you are left feeling guilty. You have all these uncomfortable emotions of guilt, of shame, of, oh, I should have, right? You kind of should all over yourself kind of thing. And so even if you do say no, you feel bad, you feel guilty, and that doesn't feel good either. Next, you might avoid conflict, hard conversations. May it be around labor, behavior, various, employee situations. You're just avoiding those hard situations. Another one, a kind of sneaky one, is you always want everything to be perfect. There's always just a constant sense of do better, do better, do better. So of course, then you have no boundaries. Lastly, on this one, you're overextending yourself. Maybe why some of you showed up today. You feel a bit burnout emotionally, mentally, in all the ways. You're just committing. You feel like probably maybe at home and or at work, you're doing all the things, just committing to all the things. So don't be shy. Share it in the comments if that's any of you guys. Next, you're secretly afraid of what others think of you. There's maybe a constant sense of, what do they think? Oh, I should probably do that, because what if they are disappointed, or they're going to judge me if I don't do that? There's that sense. You struggle to charge competitive prices. You don't want to offend anyone. So you're, oh, okay, we can do that. Oh, I'll do that for free, right? And all of a sudden you're wondering why your business isn't making money. Reminder, we're not a charity, right? It's real business. Often putting others' needs and wants above yours. Scheduling, this is a big one, whether it be weekends, whether it be just so many days in a row where you're having a hard time putting boundaries around your schedule. Anxiety about being judged or criticized with surgery. I've seen this. I've talked to a few of you around this one. It's like feeling like I always need someone with me on surgery, even though you're probably okay, or feeling like I don't want to do, dental because I'm not very, very good at that. Afraid to hold your team accountable. Write-ups is a big one as well. And yes, like Heather said, brave enough to share, throw it in the comments. I'm going to do this last slide. And this is kind of just a catch-all of if you feel like you might have a boundaries problem. feel like this is like AA for boundaries here. We'll all go around and like, my name is, so number one, people pleasing. You kind of feel like just can't stop. This shows up a lot with boundaries, and maybe another one we might do at another point is just around people pleasing. In general, you feel emotionally and physically exhausted, constantly drained, not protecting your energy. And so that is often, I think, where a lot of it shows up, maybe on our coaching calls, or you're feeling it. You see this one as well, oversharing, sharing too many things people don't need to know, or you're maybe sharing, if you say no, you're feeling like you have to explain why, when, as we all know, no is a complete sentence. Identity loss, you're always kind of worried about more so what others are feeling and thinking versus your own thoughts. And then, like we mentioned, guilt, feeling like you maybe need to apologize if you can't commit to something. And then as well, the last one, this victim mentality, this sense of feeling powerless, because you feel like you're giving, you're doing everything. And it can be really sneaky and easy to feel like, well, I'm doing all these things, right? And who's helping? And yes, Chris, no is a complete sentence. But it's that sneaky victim mentality of woe is me, even though maybe no one asked you to sign up for all those things, or no one asked you for your help. It can feel like, who is helping me kind of thing. So that's the long and short. We could probably spend a whole hour on symptoms, but anyone want a quick one or two people share one they have wrestled with or still wrestling with, or anything jump out from the list? I will call on you. One or two volunteers. Julie, I feel like I say no all the time, but I identify with a lot. Definitely wrestle with guilt and apologizing. Yes, we will get to those pesky emotions. Yes. Spencer, I'm in recovery from difficulty of saying no. I like it. Well, I don't like it, but yeah, it's good. Honesty. Good. Julie, used to put my team wants and needs above my own. I know a lot of you can resonate with that. Amy, like, is your hand raised?
Yeah.
Go for it, Amy. Thanks.
I just always felt like I had to explain my no. I would give all the details on why I couldn't possibly do that to make it okay.
Yeah. Good one.
I've really tried to step away from like saying something and then saying sorry, or like leading with sorry. So like the over apologizing, but just trying to be more aware of it. And I'm like, oh, I am doing this a lot. So
yeah. Love it. Good. Well, I'm going to keep it moving. I'm going to pass the baton here to Dr. Julie, and keep your comments coming, and we'll kind of keep moving. And also, if you have questions, feel free to either kind of hold them to the end, or feel free to throw them in the chat, and I'll kind of try and monitor it too. So, Julie, go for it.
So I'm going to talk a little bit how to think about boundaries, because this is something that I learned when I first started going through life coaching, and it really changed the way I look at it. So if you kind of think about a boundary, we kind of know about a boundary around our house, and we know what that means. It's very clear. It's very direct, like your property. We want to have that kind of clear idea of our own personal boundaries. Because if we don't have clear boundaries, then people don't know when they're violating them. So I wanted to say that a boundary is not a way to control other people, because that's what sometimes we think, right? We're trying to make other people behave the way that we want them to, but it doesn't have anything to do with them. You can't control them. Humans will be humans. Your team will be your team. Everybody will do what they want to do, and there's nothing you can do about it. Absolutely. Clients, you can't control any of it. So the boundary, I want you to think of it as being something for you that you're creating to protect you. You create the boundaries with your values and morals and your wants and your needs. And I think Heather's going to talk a little bit more about that. But I want you to really think about the boundary as having to only do with you. Doesn't have to do with anybody else or controlling their behavior. So I think that's a really important distinction to make when you're trying to set a boundary.
Next.
Anybody have an opinion about that before I go on to the next slide or question about that? Okay, so the next slide, I think, is communicating your boundaries. Because if people don't know where your boundary is around yourself, then sometimes they'll violate it, and you need to expect them to violate it. So there's several ways you can communicate your boundaries. You can communicate, first of all, by knowing what your values are, what your expectations are for your practice. So if you haven't done a value exercise where your team knows what your personal values are and how you want that to be mirrored in the way your practice is laid out, that might be a good thing to do. You can communicate with people directly for your boundaries. Say, for example, a client who is screaming in your waiting room, and that is one of your boundaries that you don't allow that. You can give if and then statements. Ms. Smith, if you continue to scream at me, if you continue to swear at me, then I'm going to ask you to leave the practice. Or you can bring them into an exam room just to kind of isolate them. But also you have to communicate what the boundary is to the person, sometimes directly. You can communicate your boundaries by having consistent behavior. So if you're constantly honest with clients, if you're constantly on time to work, if you're constantly kind to your team, that is communicating a boundary that you expect kindness, you expect timeliness. So it doesn't always have to be verbal. It could just be your behavior. And so as you're consistently doing these things, communicating your boundaries, you're teaching other people how you want to be treated, if that makes sense. Okay, and then I think my next slide talks a little bit more about the consistency of your behavior. So I just have some examples here of what a boundary might look like. A boundary might be leaving work on time, whether you say to your team, I'm going to leave for work on time, or whether you just leave. Every day, I'm going to be done by 5 or 6 o'clock or whatever time the hospital closes, and I'm going to leave. Asking your team not to contact you on your day off could be a boundary. Not checking your emails late at night could be a boundary that you set for yourself. Saying no or I'm not available without over-explaining, which Michaela talked about a little bit, without that big verbiage to tell them why you're saying no. And then maybe taking your lunch break and not feeling guilty about it. Does anybody else have an example of what a boundary might look like? I'm seeing stuff go in the chat, but I'm having a hard time reading it.
Yes, I'll say it here. Yes, Ashley says lunch. I think it's a good one too, especially working from home. It can feel like it's hard to set those boundaries, especially if you feel like you're always at your desk, or let me just check this, or constantly kind of be on. And then Spencer said, in that same vein, if you're inconsistent in those behaviors, you may be communicating that there isn't a boundary, even unintentionally.
Absolutely. Yeah. Good point, Spencer. And that's kind of what I mean by having consistent behavior will help you set those boundaries. Otherwise, people are confused that work for you or work with you. Yeah. And the lunch thing, I get it. I mean, I worked in my hospital and there were days that I didn't get to eat until 3 p.m, or sometimes you go through the whole day. But even taking the idea that I always take lunch at a certain time, one practice, we actually had to leave the building at lunchtime, which I think was probably a really good idea, probably before it's time, but I know it's sometimes hard.
Julie makes a great point, which I think often comes up with a lot of people, and me and you and everybody. She says, so I feel like these things aren't an option. If I don't check my emails at night, I won't ever get them done. If I commit to leaving work on time every day, I'll leave more things undone. She said, probably why I'm here. Glad you're here, Julie.
Well, and
yeah.
that's something we have to think about, right? Like, yes, we have to check our emails. Do we have to do it at night? Well, maybe some days, maybe there are some days that you get stuck all day and you don't have 5 minutes to sit down and do anything. But also, if that's a consistent problem for you, then we have to figure out why and how can we make a boundary so we don't have to be every night on email. Can we make a boundary during the day? Can we set aside, 15 minutes before we start work? I don't know what the boundary is for you. It doesn't really matter. But if you're never able to have any time off because you're always committed to the practice, then that's why we get burned out, and that's a problem. And so, yeah, I get it. I've done many of these things that you're talking about. Stayed late at work, answered emails at night, called clients back in the car on my way home. I've done it all. But we really do have to think about how the boundaries can be set so we don't have to constantly be working and constantly be feeling burdened by that. So the last thing I want to say, I think this is my last slide. Every time you say yes to all these things, like the emails and the, you're draining yourself. You're saying no to yourself. You're saying no to the things that matter, like your family, your kids, your health, So think about that sometimes. Setting the boundary will create trust with yourself and give you some time, which is really what makes life enjoyable. Like, I love being a veterinarian. I think it's the greatest life on earth, but you also have to have a life with your kids, with your family, with your pets, whatever it is that you value. And that's why we're talking about this today.
Good. Thanks. And I was just going to say, kind of speaking to your question, Julie, too, is one thing I think we all see is oftentimes too, sometimes when you really get into it, you realize other things are also contributing to your lack of boundaries. So it might be more of a delegation issue. It might be more of a training and empowering your team. It might be your own time management. So it could be, I think a lot of times it can feel like it's either all or nothing, right? I'm either I let it go or I have to do all the things all the time. And so that is also kind of a watch point of like feeling stuck, is feeling like this is my only option. I just have to do all the things all the time. And so hopefully this will help you breathe a bit and say, okay, let me do what I can to span back and look at this. And maybe there's some other things I can do that I only have to do my emails, right? Even 3 times a week. Like it's moving the dial a little more to your happy balance.
It kind of goes with your perfectionism point, Michaela.
Sure.
We expect that our emails are going to be answered every day, and that's a perfectionistic view, and it doesn't always have to be that way. Yeah, agreed.
Love it. Well, keep your questions coming. Keep your comments coming. Passing it off to Coach Heather to help you kind of think on the deeper, maybe kind of root thought process. I'll leave it to her.
Hey, everybody. So I feel like my slides are intended to take that one step deeper and peel back the onion to when we say value, what do we really mean? Like, what is underneath? Well, I got to show up and I got to respond to emails, and it's the why. Because before you start talking about how do I set these boundaries, we have to start with clarity, because most of the time The issue is that it's not that you don't care, it's just that you care about a lot of things all at once. You're constantly balancing multiple values, right? Your patient care, how you serve your clients, your hospital's success, your team's well-being, your own well-being. And the challenge isn't necessarily choosing the right one, because they're all right. They're all valid. They're all why you're successful and why you're here. But the boundary challenges show up when these values collide and you're getting that friction and frustration. And in the moments of, we'll just say, veterinarian hospitals, working in the veterinarian industry, it is chaotic, it is stressful. And if you're a practice manager or owner, you feel that stress and the success of your hospital. And so in those moments under pressure, a lot of us don't make the conscious decision to put our values first. We default. And what that might look like is we say yes to everything, right? Who does that? Who has somebody on their team that says, yes, I'll just do it because I don't know what else to do and I'm just going to execute? They're probably really good at that, right? Or you're overextending yourself. You're just saying yes and taking it on. You're prioritizing those immediate needs because it's chaotic and we're defaulting. But maybe we're sacrificing long-term sustainability, which some of you have mentioned already in the chat that you might be doing. So instead of asking, how do I set this boundary, I'd like to challenge you a little bit. And we're actually going to be doing some of the homework that Julie just mentioned, is to look at what our values are. And so if you are on this call, that means you were here for a reason and you're hoping to get something out of this. So I challenge you all to put in the chat the answer to the first question on the right side of the screen, which is, what matters to you the most at work? What is your most important value? Please, you brave individuals, I encourage you to put that in the chat.
Helping people.
Making an impact, being reliable, our people, working as a team, caring for your team, the team, help hospitals run smoothly, know how to do your job, the team effort, right? Everybody chipping in, getting it done. Surely there's some folks who care about pet care. There it is, taking care of the pets and the clients. Julie was about to be like, what? I'm just kidding. Yes. Okay. Love that. Values, the people. That's your why. That's why you're here. That's why you're still here doing what you do. Now I want you to take a minute, and I don't want names. I don't want people. I want situations. I want you to flip the switch and say, what drains you consistently? This is the homework. This is the hard stuff. Please put it in the chat. This is your accountability to yourself right here. We're not taking notes. We're not sharing this. The amount of work drains you consistently. Drama between team members drains you consistently. What else? The minute you say it, you become aware of it. You put power to the words that are keeping you from the values, the things that that matter most to you, the things you're defaulting to. To Julie's point earlier, when you say yes to these things that drain you, you're sucking the energy away out of the things that give you life. Not having enough resources to get everything done. Not engaging work tasks. Absolutely. So your frustration to these things that drain you consistently, those are clues. They're not problems. I mean, they are in the general sense of like, I got problems, right? But they are clues. We are taking action. We are accountable for how we choose to show up, what we choose to spend our energy on. And it is just pointing to a boundary that we haven't named or that we haven't put intentionality behind to support, to put our energy toward. So I want to talk about the next slide here, because this is where I think sometimes we get hung up, where our values aren't necessarily being honored. But the next question becomes, okay, well, what is actually my responsibility to carry in this situation and what isn't? Sometimes when you're in a situation where you feel like you have to say yes to everything for the success of your hospital, for the success of your team, you might feel like every patient, client, outcome, the success of your hospital is your responsibility. But there's a critical difference between being responsible to your role and feeling responsible for everything. Right, Michaela kind of mentioned this in one of our slides earlier. You feel a victim to everything. You have no control. That's one of the worst feelings. But what's on the left is truly your responsibility. Providing competent medical care, making sure that it's good quality medical care, communicating. That's what Julie shared. Like, you got to communicate your expectations clearly. You got to communicate. You're part of it. You act professionally. And I wanted to add this, and we forgot to get it on the slide, but leading your team and being a good team member, that's your responsibility. That's why you're employed. That's what we expect of you, to show up. The things on the right.
I think that was my responsibility, Heather, that I was
Hey!
to the slide. So,
Okay.
fail.
No, it's okay. The things on the right are things that are not your responsibility. Your financial ability or limitation of your clients' decisions, right? That's one of the hardest things that you have no control over. The medical outcomes of your patients. You're responsible for the care, not the outcome. Right, so I hear this all the time. A good example of a boundary conflict is like having to decide at the end of the day, do I take one more case or not? I'm being asked to say yes to everything, and here they are coming through the door at the end. Now you're having to balance your values, your why of caring for your team that I saw some of you post in the chat, and then the why of the success of your hospital. In moments like those, you have to determine what is going to support you and your health long term, right? Go back to that previous slide I was talking about. It's like, in the moment, we are deciding these decisions quickly and by default. So if we aren't practicing these boundaries and getting really good at it, muscle memory, we're going to default. So you have to do the work. And you have to be consistent to the previous point that Julie made. You may not necessarily be consistently selecting the same action, but what we're suggesting and recommending is to consistently select the value that you want to have as a part of your life, your goal, how you show up at work. Okay, just remember, you're not responsible for the care, or you're responsible for the care, not the outcome. My last slide here, and I think I'm maybe running up on time a little bit, and maybe this is homework for you, and I would encourage you to think of that difficult case that you've recently had. If you haven't done this already, just reflect. What was truly in your responsibility? Remember that list on the left. And what did you take on that wasn't yours? Was it somebody else's responsibility? Was it outside of your control? And when you have those two side by side, step back. What boundary do you want to set, or do you want to strengthen? Maybe what value do you want to invest more in because you're depleted in that area and you've been putting in more time in a different value, or you haven't even been putting in time in your own values enough? It's a wake-up call, right? You're here for a reason. Boundaries aren't about caring less. They're about caring sustainably. So with that, I'm going to pass it over to Michaela. She's going to talk to us a little bit more about why this is important.
Yeah, love it. Thank you. And with that, Julie said, I have more responsibilities than what is listed. 100%. You know, we all could probably spend the next hour and everybody lists out, you know, all of your responsibilities, which actually might not be a terrible homework assignment. And then with that, to pair them kind of as you do that, put it next to these questions that Heather has to say, line by line, which is actually your responsibility. I've seen it as well as not only kind of like tasks people are taking responsibility for, but like emotionally, you're taking responsibility for something that is not yours, is not a part of your outcome that you can even control, and kind of go through that list of responsibilities with the questions that Heather posed is a really good homework action point. But yeah, kind of keep your comments, questions coming. With that, why is this important? Because we want to live our best life just like Clark. And he certainly is living his best life. And so, you know, if you're feeling exhausted emotionally, mentally, physically, in all of the ways, you know, this is really the crux of it, right? Is these healthy, good boundaries, personally, professionally, that can allow you space and time to breathe, to do what, you know, Pet Vet has talked about of, you know, being a people first, being a company that values work-life balance, whatever that looks like, right, in this day and age. But why it's important. And so we have to remember that it's not easy. If it was easy, none of us would be here and we'd be all having lunch with no interruptions right now. But the reality is you really have to kind of understand that you have to pick your hard. I have to move over the slide because it's too distracting for me. I don't know why. It's funny, but it's also distracting. But to remember to pick your hard, it's going to be uncomfortable either way, right? If you're setting the boundary, you're probably having to wrestle through the emotions, maybe the guilt. But if you don't set the boundary, you're also then staying stuck and more exhausted and all the things. And so it's going to be hard either way, but to remember that it really is, I think like Heather alluded to, it really is a muscle that you're having to build, you're having to learn how to do. We didn't, you know, we came out of the womb, right, wanting to like please our parents and please our significant, you know, the people in charge of us, our authorities. And so we have to turn around now and learn to say no, learn to say not yet, maybe learn to sit with your guilt, your uncomfortable emotions, do the hard thing of labor, send your team home, let them know their hours are going to have to be less, say no, maybe pause. You know, one of the best things I did and I still do it oftentimes with boundaries is I'll say, let me get back to you. Let me check my schedule. And I like give myself a 24-hour waiting period where I have to really pause, check in with myself. You know, do I actually want to do this? Because a lot of times too, I would get in trouble with committing to things because I'm like, oh yeah, in a week, I'll be fine, right? Well, one of the best advice I ever got was like, if you don't feel good about it now, you're probably not going to feel good about it in a week, right? If your no is a no now, it's going to be a no in a week. So learn to speak up about your needs, whatever it might be. But just to remember, it's going to be hard either way. But our goal here today is to just start to build that muscle. Julie, I like that. You call it the 24-hour rule. Time to respond, to think. So we want you all to think about, okay, with everything we said, one, any questions, follow-up you have, but then also if you had to pick one boundary or one part of this that you feel like is a part of the muscle you're growing around boundaries, what would that thing be, that issue be? Would it be around your emotions? Would it be around, saying something to your team with labor? And let me, go to Julie here quick. Can you explain what sit with your guilt means? That sounds horrible. Yes, Julie, it is. Sit with your emotions, sit with your guilt. I think of it as like, here's my friend guilt, right? And guilt doesn't feel like, sometimes I'll imagine, okay, I'm sitting with my guilt. Here it is. It feels yucky. It feels not good. But let me take it a step further, because guilt often is connected to a certain thought in your head, right? It's connected to, and I'm going to pass it to Julie because she explains this well. I know for me, I'll just give a personal example, is hardest thing I have had to do is set boundaries with my family. And so when I had to learn to say no, or not yet, or whatever it might be with my family, I would feel a sense of guilt. But really what that guilt was a thought that I'm a disappointment. Like, if I don't say no, I'm going to be a disappointment to them. They're going to judge me. But it was really around this sense of I'm a disappointment. So oftentimes your emotions, your guilt is tied to the thought process that's not helping you, that you kind of need to dive in and unpack. But Julie, and then maybe Heather, anything you would say to that piece?
Well, I totally agree with that. And one of the most powerful things I learned when I was going through studying to become a coach is the idea that every one of your feelings comes from your thoughts. And that's a really simple thing to say. It's a very difficult thing in practice. But once you realize that, like Michaela said, and you have a negative feeling like guilt that feels horrible, like Julie said, you can think about it and say, well, right now I'm feeling very guilty. And then just sit back and ask yourself why. And I like asking myself this question if I'm having a strong negative emotion, just saying, why am I feeling guilt? And when you ask that question, then all the thoughts come out. Well, the client needs help, and I should stay after work to help the client, and I'm a veterinarian, and I took an oath, and like all these things that where the guilt comes from when you say no to a client or a team member or whatever. All of those thoughts are just thoughts, and they're optional because you have the power to change those thoughts. And so it sounds like a really simple thing to do, and it's not. I don't want to oversimplify it because it's really hard. But just to say, sitting with your guilt and being like, okay, I feel guilty. Why? And then like, oh, yes, of course I feel guilty because I could have helped this client. I didn't have to send them to the ER. Now they're going to have to spend a bunch of money. And just like hearing all those thoughts and understanding the guilt is what it means to me to sit with your guilt. And if you want to still feel guilty, that's fine. Like, guilt is not going to kill anyone. Like, you feeling guilty about anything isn't going to kill you. But if you can get comfortable with feeling a little bit guilty because you're protecting your boundary, then that's what I think of when sitting with your guilt, is I can feel guilty and still be okay with it because now I'm protecting my value, my boundary, or whatever it is that you put as the higher value. Do you have anything to add, Heather?
Yeah, I love that. And I feel like are statements that are really good indicators that there is an expectation of you, either put by somebody else or by this really tough internal critic that we all have, that is forcing you to do something that you may or may not want to do. I know it's more of a practice of how we communicate, but I really encourage my clients to say, well, if you should do something, what is it that you really want to do? Right? Like it should come from a choice. We have control. I want to show up and take this extra patient on because that is what I want to accomplish. Not that I need to or that I should. That's all external. I know it seems simple, but when you come from a place of choice, that might help you get over the feelings of I'm being forced to do something else, or I should do this. It might actually help you unravel. Well, I don't need to do that. That's somebody else's expectation, somebody else's role. That's not my role. Or maybe I need to delegate that because, again, that's not my role. So look for I shoulds and really challenge yourself to think, is this something that I want to do? Or is this something that somebody else or some other unrealistic expectation is telling me that I have to do?
Love it. Another thing I'd just add to that too is like the next piece that then I often had to wrestle with was the guilt, and then followed by the like, okay, it's attached to this sense of I'm a disappointment or I might be a disappointment. And then I had to also just kind of realize that they might be disappointed, right? Like that also might be true. It's not that you think these things and it's like, oh yeah, that's, stinking thinking, that's dumb. And sometimes it is bad thinking and not true. But a lot of times, yeah, you might disappoint a client, you might disappoint a team, but that is also a boundary of like, that is theirs to deal with. And that is their emotion to deal with, their responsibility to deal with. And that is like a very good, healthy boundary that they get to be. You send your 6-year-old to go make their bed and they might be mad and angry and whatever, right? I don't care. Go make your bed, right? I don't care what attitude you do it in, right? Obviously, we want the good attitude eventually, but that's kind of a healthy distinction as well. But I know a lot of you have set good boundaries, have in the process of creating different boundaries. So I'd love to hear from a few of you guys on either things that you've done that have like, okay, this is a boundary we've set in our practice, whether it's you, whether it's with the team, that you could share that could be helpful, or something you're even kind of in process of doing or wanting to do. Anybody want to share? Unmute and share. How about Ashley Egan? Oh, she just left. How convenient.
That was her boundary.
She's like, oh, she's getting ready to say the A. How about I'll call a few people. How's that? Katie, April, Lauren, any like things you've seen, experienced that have been good and healthy for you? I'll just say everybody's in. Rachel,
Okay.
Samantha,
I'll share.
April. Okay, thanks.
So my boundary, I guess it's more of kind of how I balance it out. My other love are my dogs and running agility. So I make sure that I have a good balance of being able to spend time with my dogs and do that with work. So I'll put in 120% at work, but when I'm doing stuff with my dogs, I'll make time for that. And that is what helps me. That is what has helped me set boundaries, because if I'm not going to be able to do things with them, then I know I'm not going to be happy. So
Really good. That was kind of like everything in a nutshell. You tapped into Heather's like values, your values, what you see as important. Julie, like only things that you can control, not other people. And then a big part I think of that is, you know, you saying yes to that just brings you so much energy back. And it gives you space for the other things. Really good. Anybody else kind of want to share, or are like, I'm drowning, help, questions, thoughts? Lauren?
I'll start. I think similar to April, except just like making sure I take care of myself, like physically. So getting enough sleep, like going to the gym. It's so easy to, and I will say I absolutely fell off the bandwagon in Q1. Like I put work first and I didn't get enough sleep and I didn't exercise. And so it's really that's how I know that I'm going to bring the best of myself and how I'm going to take care of myself long term. But it has to be like a conscious reminder to myself that it's okay to take that time, because it actually makes me a better coworker in the long run.
Yep, 100%. Love it.
This
Karen?
is Karen.
Yeah.
I'll piggyback off of her. You know, it's funny because Dr. Fincher, she gets up at 4 o'clock every morning and exercises, and I'm not that dedicated. I can't get up at 4 o'clock in the morning, but I have to admit, I started getting up early every morning and exercising, and I cannot believe what a difference it makes. I'm not an early morning exerciser, but I have so much more energy throughout the day, and I feel like I can focus so much better, and I love it. Like, it really makes a big difference through the rest of the day. So yeah, getting up early and exercising has definitely helped me.
I love it. That's good. And sometimes it's backwards like that, right? Where you're like, I'm going to add this in at what feels like a maybe inconvenient time, and actually gives you more energy in the end. How about Chris Henning, Ashley Egan, words of wisdom for us?
I definitely fall into the category of my inbox has to be at a 0 by the end of the day, or I can't stop working. And I've gotten better and have been able to kind of prioritize those messages and be like, okay, this isn't an emergency. I can sit on this one for a second because they can live with this how it is. It's not an emergency, but this request, this one's more important. I am going to do that one. So we also have so many hospitals now in different time zones. It's just not realistic to think that I can, you know, cover all of that business time. So I have I've learned to live with the fact that my inbox isn't going to remain at 0 24/7.
Chris, there's people on this call, I won't call them out, that have like 2,000, 4,000 unread emails in their inboxes that, I mean, I would just delete all.
I can't handle that. Like, I cannot.
You want anxiety.
It's just,
I would pair you. You know who you are.
Just start a new email at that point.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Get a new email address. That solves that problem.
Oh my gosh.
It's like, I declare bankruptcy. Yeah.
Can I share one?
Please.
I know you didn't call on me, but
Nah, you're good.
okay, thank you. The speaking stick. You know, one of the things that for me, I said, what's important to me is making an impact. And when I was in practice, one of the things that I confused for creating an impact or having an impact was taking on every challenge or problem that my team faced. And so one of the boundaries that I put in place was that they had to approach any problem they brought to me with a solution. And one of the ways that I helped to rationalize, you know, the lizard part of my brain that immediately kind of shirked at the idea that I might be shirking responsibility to somebody else was that, you know, I thought through the process of who does it really serve if I solve every problem for them without giving them the opportunity to. So there was a thought process to ensure that I was giving them an opportunity to grow their skill set and develop.
Mhm. Yes. Really, I think that's a great point, because how many, probably a majority sometimes of our boundaries are because we aren't training and empowering our team, delegating, because we're just doing it ourselves, when in the long run, it's only hurting you, them, their development. So really, really good point. As we kind of round out here, I'd love if either a couple of people would share or throw in the chat, what is your one thing, one boundary, one kind of small hanging fruit that you want to work on? Often I hear and see that it's helpful maybe to pick what feels maybe easiest, or like, you know, maybe don't do the big, I need to say no to my mom about Christmas, you know, something, right? You know, maybe start with the low hanging fruit of what feels like you pick up the 10-pound weight, not the 50, right? Unless you're a bodybuilder, then you go 50. But go ahead, throw it in the chat. A few people, if you want to unmute and share too. Even if you already have shared, you can share again, okay? Tell us, like, what is that one thing you want to work on, whether it be emotions, whether it be something specific with your team, a client, personally. What do we have? And then Julie, Heather too, anything else you want to kind of like emphasize, last kind of things you would throw out, feel free.
Well, as you guys are typing in your things that you want to do, your baby steps, so to speak, for boundaries, I just want to encourage you all that, like, this is not an easy thing to do. It is difficult, and I get it specifically. But it's hard for everyone. We're people pleasers. We want people to like us. We're perfectionists. It's a very common thing for people that work in this industry. And so just know that if it feels hard, it is hard. And it doesn't mean there's something wrong with you. It just means that there's some work to do. And that's why Michaela and Heather and I are all here to help you do the work. And so it's not easy, but I want you to know that it's possible. And that if your life feels heavy right now and chaotic and crazy and that there's nothing you can do about it, it's not true. There's things you can do with time and work and help. So reach out.
Yeah. And the only thing that I could add from a spouse of a veterinarian is, if you can't set the boundary for yourself, set it for the people that you love and who count on you. It doesn't have to be your spouse. It can be your friends. It can be your pet babies. It can be whoever is most important. So I have met a many folks who I've coached really struggle with seeing the value in themselves to hold the boundary, but the minute they see it in somebody else's eyes and how it impacts them, when I'm waiting for my wife and I have dinner ready and she's just not there and food is getting cold and, you know, I've prepared and blah, blah, blah. And she was like, oh, it's just a case, walk through the door, yada, yada, yada. It happens all the time, but that takes a toll. And I know that's kind of a flippant example, but just think about the toll that it takes and be mindful of that.
Love it. Thank you. Yeah, Julie, I like to work towards attending scheduled Zoom meetings through the day. Love it. Currently getting pulled away about half the time. Yeah, that's a good one. So yeah, I think I know a lot of you I recognize are in probably coaching calls with one of us. If not, you're more than welcome to jump into coaching calls and work through some of these things. And like Julie said, I feel like it took me a solid year of like really working through boundaries with my family until I got it. Like, it takes time. And even this, like yesterday, Monday, I had a meeting with my therapist and was like, I feel like I've regressed. You know, I'm like, I have like 4 softball games this week. It was like a lot, you know, too much, right? Not enough saying no. And so it is hard. It's not easy and it takes time. But it definitely is a muscle that you can learn and grow, and reach out to us. I think we're going to be doing 2 more topics. One is, I think, on delegation, which may be next. Probably a good follow-up to this. And then I think the last one is kind of around burnout. Maybe we'll throw in a little people pleasing with it. So if there are other topics or areas you'd love for us to dive into, can do that. Definitely reach out as well for further coaching with any of this. So thank you, and happy boundaries. And yeah, appreciate it. And you know how to get a hold of us, and go get them, right? Go get them. Thank you all. So with that, any last thoughts or comments out there? Someone? Good. Good. And I'm going to go, the biggest boundary I have to set is with my dog, Peaches. There's boundaries there, right? We all know she runs the show.
She runs the show. That's okay.
Yeah, you know, actually.
Treats for my dog.
Yeah.
Separate. All right. Thank you all. Appreciate it.
Bye.
See y'all.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.